Hello, Megan. Thanks for joining
Simon.
me. This is our first episode of the Ethical True Crime Review Show
It is.
with Dr. Simon Hobbs
And Dr. Megan Hoffman.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And we're two ethical true crime scholars.
We are.
And the point of the show is to really take a very famous, well-known true crime production and discuss whether it's ethical or not. And it kind of mirrors a lot of the conversations we have when we're writing.
Yeah.
So we thought it would be great to kind of unpick this process a little bit more. So, Megan, tell me what we're looking at today.
So before we start, I'm just going to issue a brief content warning.
Oh, lovely.
Because I think that's a good idea,
It's
don't
important.
you?
Yeah. If we're going to be ethical, it's absolutely central.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I should have done it.
Well, I'm doing it. So to our audience, we are going to be talking about true crime media. That means we're going to be talking about crimes, sometimes violent crimes. And if you're not in a space where you want to listen to a show about violent crimes, then please don't listen. We won't be offended. We wish that we didn't watch quite so much true crime media ourselves.
Absolutely. Self-care is important, and you should, practice that in everything you consume.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great.
Yeah, so anyway, today we are going to be talking about the podcast Serial. It came out in 2014 as a spin-off of the American public radio show, This American Life. It's hosted by journalist Sarah Koenig.
Yeah.
And it has 4 seasons to date, but for today's purposes, we're going to be talking about the first season.
Definitely the biggest season.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah,
listened to maybe half of the second season, and I thought, no.
The first season.
The first season.
It was massive.
Yeah.
It was a phenomenon, wasn't it? It was huge.
It was a phenomenon.
It can be. I think we can say it's responsible for changing the trajectory of true crime and podcasts.
100%.
It's that big.
Yeah, it sort of emerged in the kind of like zeitgeist of podcasts.
Absolutely.
And it became this podcast that sort of defined the genre almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit.
We will talk about that.
When we
You're getting
start-
ahead of me.
when we start
I'm
talking
doing the
about our points.
overview.
Yeah, sorry.
So anyway, this podcast came out in 2014, and what it did was it looked at the trial, or not the trial, the case of Adnan Syed, who was convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend, Hayman Lee. And what happened was one of Adnan's friends, I think it was, wrote into Sarah Koenig and said, I'd really like you to look at this for one of your projects because I believe that Adnan was wrongfully convicted. And so Sarah went and she interviewed Adnan, she interviewed all the people involved, and the whole kind of narrative of the first season of the podcast was, did Adnan do it or did he not do it? And that is the entire narrative.
Yeah, it's very much long-form storytelling.
It's very much long-form storytelling.
Which has then gone on to define the genre,
Yeah.
especially in kind of those big Netflix shows and stuff like that. It's one story, and she says that, doesn't it? One story
does.
told over multiple episodes.
Yeah.
It's not would episodic be short? Anyway.
Episodic short.
Yeah,
like,
it's a big,
episode
long,
by episode.
We sit with this case for multiple hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this podcast became huge. Like, it was the sort of definition of water cooler media. Like, everybody listened to it. It ended up winning a Peabody Award, which is massive. That is the sort of radio equivalent of a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
And that was the first podcast to ever win a Peabody Award. So it sort of made podcasts into like a legitimate form of media for journalism, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really pushed along the format, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
In a way that probably we haven't seen too much since. It was really that moment. Well, it was like lightning in a bottle.
It was, yeah. It was sort of, it became such a pop culture moment. It was parodied on SNL. It was parodied on Family Guy. It was like a huge thing. Everybody knew about it. And what that did was bring true crime into the sort of popular cultural consciousness in a way that it had never been before.
Absolutely. And in everything reread, Serial is cited.
Yeah,
as
that's true.
One of the key moments.
Yeah.
Like, it really is cited as the key moment in this cultural boom of true crime, which is still happening some 11 years after. I mean, it might have waned. You could argue maybe there's been a slight, it's plateaued slightly, maybe.
I don't know if it has.
Do you not reckon it's still going as strong?
I reckon it's still going.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
But this show was really, we can put this and some other shows that we might be talking about in future episodes at the center of this.
Yeah, because Making a Murderer, the Netflix
That's
show,
the
came
other
out the same year.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like oh my God, true crime's everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. Great.
Yeah.
What a great overview of a show that hopefully lots of people are familiar with.
Yeah.
Or if you're not, maybe it would be a time to revisit it and see the kind of roots, not the roots of the genre, because the genre has existed for hundreds of years, but the roots of the kind of new formation of the genre.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting listening to it again because I hadn't listened to it since probably 2015 or 16, like not too long after it came out. Like I was a little late to the party, but not that late to the party.
No, and I think I listened to it a lot later than that. But again, we both re-listened to it recently in order to prep for this. So it's fresh in our minds.
Yep.
And going back as well, you know, I listened to it before we wrote about true crime, and now having done the work we've done,
and that's interesting.
I think our views are different, and we're really coming at this from that kind of stance of, you know, is this ethical? What does that mean? What does ethics mean? It's about, you know, victim-centered. It's about consent. These are the kind of things that we'll pick up on as we discuss it.
Yeah.
So what we've both done is kind of come up with privately notes on the show and what we think, which is kind of what we do when we decide to write about something.
That's true.
We'll say, this looks interesting, we'll write our notes, and then we'll meet and discuss it. So it's kind of like that. So I think I'll start.
Okay,
because you've already touched upon one of my main points.
Okay.
And I think if I was going to be kind of a little bit simplistic about this, I think we can think like, where does this point sit it? Does it make it more ethical or less ethical? And I think this opening point, I think it makes it more ethical.
Okay.
With quite a big caveat.
Okay.
So basically, it's what you said. She's a journalist.
Yep.
And the story comes to her.
Yep.
She's a journalist who has written about cases in the area and written about kind of injustice in the area. That's her field, and that's why she was approached.
Yep.
So she doesn't go looking for this story. What she's not doing, and what we see a lot of now, and I'll talk about this, is we see a lot of people deciding what's the most interesting true crime story and what might get viewers and what might be the most commercial or what might be the next serial, basically. She's not doing that. It comes to her. She's trained as a journalist, and they have, as we know, spending time and working with journalists, they have kind of strict ethical codes themselves.
Very true.
So she is a professional, maybe not a professional podcaster at this point, but a professional
There's
journalist.
no such thing as a professional podcaster at that point.
That's true.
But, like, I think we have to remember that.
Yeah,
this is like right at the beginning of
we are in the
podcast.
infancy. Yeah. So I think for me, that makes it in some way more ethical.
Okay.
She's not gone out of her way to uncover this story.
Okay.
She's trained. She's a professional journalist. There's a level there that means maybe she's the right person to do this. Yes, she didn't need to turn it into a podcast, and yes, she's made a lot of money from it and stuff, but, you know, it's within the realm of her job. However, the legacy of that, I think, actually potentially has set the genre back quite a lot, because what happened is it becomes massive, it wins a Peabody, it's commercially huge. Like, now when you listen to it, you have to like pay for it.
Yeah,
right?
that's true. Yeah, we were surprised about that, weren't we? So because being associated with like American National Public Radio, that is notoriously a free platform.
But now it's monetized.
Yes.
And she's a star,
yes.
right? And it was huge, right? What happens in the wake of that is a lot of other people try to write the next serial and be the next serial. So what you get is you get an absolute cavalcade of people reaching for the next big true crime story.
Yeah.
And that includes journalists, but it also includes amateurs.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily, and I think it's wrong, and we've spoken about this, that amateur content creators produce less ethical material. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
However, in the kind of gold rush of true crime that follows, unethical shows are produced. And I think without serial, they perhaps don't get made.
I like the gold rush metaphor.
Megan, I'm full of them.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Spend some time with me, you'll hear it.
I do.
But yeah, that's true. But I just think that kind of, that rush for good content drives a lot of people to then do potentially, people who aren't quite as trained, people who are looking at true crime for the wrong reasons. It then becomes a way not to maybe tell a story or to decide if someone's innocent or guilty. It becomes a way to make a living or monetize it or get the next Peabody or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think the kind of copycats that come out of it maybe put the genre's ethical progress on hold. And it's maybe why we can have discussions about whether something's ethical, because there is a slew of texts that follow it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of half and half. I think in terms of the text itself and how it exists, I think actually that origin is okay. I'm okay with that. I'm quite tough on this stuff, but I feel quite comfortable with that.
Okay.
I think what it can't control is the kind of what it causes because of its success. And it's not only responsible for that, but the time it came out, I think that's something that I think we can almost put a little mark against it, which is maybe unfair, but we do need to, this isn't about fair, this is about whether it's ethical.
Yeah.
Who said fairness was ever, it's not really part of it. We can be strict and we can expect more and we should demand more. So that's my, I don't know, did you?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. And I think this provides a nice little segue into one of my points.
Here we go.
I'm going to take it back to the narrative a little bit, because you're talking about the kind of wider context of true crime and podcasts. One of my perhaps bigger issues with it is that at a couple points she admits that she's practicing bad journalism. Like, for example, one point she goes to the house of one of the people, Jay, who's one of the main people involved in the case. He's one of the main people who testified against Adnan Syed.
Yeah. He's a really important figure in the podcast.
He's a really important figure in the podcast. Yeah.
And I think, you might say this, and sorry if I'm, but I think for people who are listening, a lot of people are torn between, is it Adnan, is it Jay?
Yeah, and I mean, we were when we talked about it.
Well, we were, and we shouldn't be, because we should be better than that.
And we shouldn't be, we should be so much better than that, and yet we weren't. Which is a testament to how good this narrative is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so anyway, she tries to contact Jay. She doesn't get in contact with him. He won't return her calls, basically. And so she shows up at his house and she says, this is unethical journalism, but basically I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the podcast format and how new it was at the time kind of allowed her to be able to sort of practice this quote unquote bad journalism in a way that maybe she wouldn't have been able to if she was doing, I don't know, like print journalism or whatever.
Yeah, there is this kind of, and it gets used, but like the Wild West, there is a lack of, and still, there's a huge lack of regulation in podcasts, which is why people can kind of do what they want. I mean, we're doing one now, we've not got any training, and we could, we can say whatever we want. But like, I think that lack of, you're right, while she is a journalist, you are right, this isn't necessarily journalism, it's an entertainment podcast.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And
right.
that's what I'm kind of getting to.
Yeah.
And I think both of my other points kind of relate to that as well. But I mean,
no, go for another point actually. If you've got one that leads off of that, then then go for it. I'm happy. If there's like a point within a point, we can get kind of it's like Inception or something.
Yeah.
So if you've got another point, go for it.
I'm wondering if I should leave my biggest bugaboo until last.
No, I think we should, we don't want to run out of time.
No, I know.
So I think do it. Let's give the people what they might want.
Well, we don't know what the people want, but this is what we want, so that's why we're talking.
Yeah.
Okay, so next. This is my biggest problem with the podcast, and this is the thing that I really fixated on when I was listening to it this kind of second time.
I've got a feeling I might have it.
I think you might.
Because I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we both didn't kind of notice this, and I think we kind of talked about it, and we were like, no, we can't talk about this. So at one point, Sarah Koenig reads aloud. Yeah.
I've got it.
Reads aloud excerpts from Heyman Lee's journals, her private diary, and her justification for that is that it was used in evidence in the case. So it was already in the public domain and people have already heard it. However, I do take pretty big ethical issue with reading aloud the private journal of a murdered teenage girl.
I do.
And I know there's a lot to be said, and we will talk about this on this podcast about giving victims a voice. I feel that this isn't that. And I know it's a complex issue, but I feel that this isn't that. What were you going to say?
No, I agree. I was just going to say I agree. I don't think it is giving her a voice. Actually, I think it's the removal of agency. This is her private journal.
100%.
There is not a moment, and whether she did this behind the scenes, because I've been thinking about this, whether she did it behind the scenes and really thought about it, there's not a moment of reflection in the show. I
was going to say that,
where she thinks, should I do this?
Yes.
Her opinion is, it's in the public domain, it was used as evidence, and therefore, it's fair game.
Yes.
There's nothing to suggest, and I'm just looking at my notes, because I think I wrote something that was quite... So what I thought it suggests, it suggests that death or murder instantly makes everything public
Yeah.
or open.
Yeah.
There's no
good point.
question that she shouldn't. There's no question that it could upset her living relatives or people who knew her or her friends, some of which are interviewed.
And it did, in fact.
Well, please, yeah.
Oh, well, I wasn't even going to talk about this, but...
Well, no, I think it's useful. Because
Yeah,
I think it's context to why this bothers us so much.
Yeah.
Because just because something's been used in court, that court's one system. It's not a podcast.
100%.
And court isn't entertainment.
And exactly.
It's not consumed in the same way. It's not consumed by the same people or for the same reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we're talking about true crime being ethical, we're really talking about true crime as an entertainment output.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless if it could be mentioned in court till the cows come home, they could still be reading it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is that then you are putting it into a format in which you can gain traction, celebrity, money. Why are you using that? But yeah, tell us a bit more, because I think you know more about this kind of family. I didn't look into that too much.
I mean, this wasn't even going to be one of the points that I brought up, but it has to do with this point. So Haley's brother made quite a viral Reddit post after the podcast aired, just saying how kind of re-traumatizing it was for the family to know that this podcast was out there. And I can't even imagine being her brother and listening to her private diaries being read out. I mean,
imagine your murdered sister becomes the focus of the biggest podcast ever.
Exactly.
And it's being mocked on SNL.
Yeah.
You can't look anywhere without Serial being mentioned.
Yeah.
And then on that same podcast, you're discussing and reading excerpts from what is a young woman's diary. That's really, really, and the details are, I mean, when I listened to it, I was thinking, do you need to hear this stuff? I don't think you do. I don't think you could, maybe there could be some room for paraphrasing. Maybe there could be.
Well, that's the thing. Like I was thinking before, you could very easily paraphrase her whole diary in a sentence and say like, their relationship, like many teenage relationships, had its ups and downs. And that is the entire point of her reading the diary out.
It's so voyeuristic.
Yes.
Because she's lost all agency.
Yeah.
And not, and this extends a history in the true crime genre of women losing agency, of victims losing agency.
Yeah.
And then to read her private diaries where she's talking about boys and who she likes and who she doesn't like, I don't really think it gives us anything.
Yeah.
It might, of course, have given the jury something. That's not what we're necessarily doubting.
That's very different.
But here, I think it's alongside this going to see Jay, it was, and there's other moments, but those are the two big moments, but this one I think overshadows quite a lot, where I thought, that's not cool.
It made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it made me really angry.
It hasn't aged well.
It hasn't aged well at all.
And I think actually the text has aged quite well and stands up.
Yeah, in general, probably.
But
this
isn't great. It's not a great look to be reading from a dead woman's diary on your podcast.
And I'm just thinking, I feel like it would be quite different if her family was involved and if her family had given consent as to the exact phrases that they wanted Sarah Koenig to read out of Hayes' diary.
Or her mum reads it.
Or her mum reads it.
There's decisions, and we have seen in later, and maybe, actually no, I was going to say it's different in documentary. It isn't at all.
It isn't.
You still have talking heads.
It isn't.
But maybe we've seen in later documentaries, and I'm thinking of the one about, I'm going to blank here, and this is really embarrassing. It was the one about the college murders that happened in, is it?
Oh, the Idaho murders?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of, the parents talk.
Yeah, that was an amazing documentary.
It's an amazing documentary. Yeah. It's really well considered. It only deals with the fallout of the crime. There's nothing about the criminal, But there they reveal private information about the kind of relationships their kids were having.
Point. Yeah.
I mean, they're not reading diaries, but they're in control of what they say.
Right.
And what I guess we're pointing at is it ethical to make a show, documentary or podcast, about a crime where only half of those involved are on board?
Yeah.
So what you've got Saeed's family are spoken to. They speak to his mother, they speak to friends of his, they speak to some friends of Hay. But clearly there's a very important factor, the family, who aren't involved. How ethical is that? Would you, I mean, I don't know if I'd carry on with that show. I think that would be a sign that, like, what we've got to ask is, why are they making that show? Why are they pushing on in that way? I think that's a question to be asked.
Yeah, but I think we haven't really touched on this, and the show Serial does follow the kind of really classic true crime formula of the wronged man narrative, and I think we'll be talking about that a lot more in subsequent podcasts. But it's just this classic framework for a true crime narrative where we look at this man who has maybe been wrongfully convicted, and we're made to sympathize with him, and maybe rightfully so, but maybe not rightfully
But maybe
so.
not. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my third point. So
Is it? Okay.
My point was
Okay.
Diary, and then Story Coming to Her, and then my final point, and there were some others that are close, are making a show about a miscarriage of justice is an ethically tricky thing to do. Because if Saeed's innocent, of course, then it's an important show that sees him, a wrongfully convicted man, get another chance. If he's guilty, it's fucking awful.
It is.
It's terrible.
Yes.
It's the worst possible thing to make. Right?
Yeah.
Because then you're spending all your time speaking to a person who did kill someone, suggesting that they might not have. That's terrible. Right? Now, regardless, we have differing opinions. We've spoken about this. It's a great narrative. It really draws you in. Regardless of innocence or guilt, which what we're doing in here is we're not talking about the show. We don't care necessarily about that.
No, we don't.
Regardless of that, Hay, the victim, is completely forgotten at times. Like, she completely just fades away out of the narrative at times. And then when she does come back, it's often with intimate details, and it's often with like a voyeuristic lens. So we get some background on Hay, and we understand that she was a nice person and all that kind of stuff that often you get about victims. But there's no episode dedicated to her. Her tragedy becomes a platform to discuss someone else's innocence. It's not, I always feel, and there's bigger shows, Staircase does it, Making a Murderer does it. That it is a trait.
It's a classic framework.
Because it's that kind of whodunit, it plays into like the Pulp Fiction kind of, it's an uncomfortable thing, and I think while we're not here to say it is or isn't based on his innocence, because who knows? Do you know what I mean? You don't know, and it doesn't actually, who cares what we think? That's not the point. The point is, objectively, because it's a subjective thing really, that innocence is a subjective thing, objectively, Hay fades into the background. It's his story, not hers. She is a moment in his story of potential innocence. It's not her story of murder or death or whatever. And that is a real ethical issue that we see, again, because of the success of this, played again and again and again and again. And we take issue with that, especially in a kind of Me Too era where we're taught, and this is pre.
It is pre, but I think that these sorts of treatments of people continue on
absolutely.
in true crime productions now. Easily. Like, I mean, it's sort of timeless in that way almost.
It's
like
annoyingly
maybe some
timeless.
things would have been done differently.
Like,
had it been done maybe post Me Too, for example, but maybe not.
But that's why I say it holds up. Because in one way I don't think it's terrible, but in another way I don't think it would be done much different now. And that's not necessarily a good thing. It shows that the genre is maybe not moving on as much as it should, and it's not doing things in a way that it should. The hope is if it got made now, it wouldn't be made, because they speak to Hay's family, they'd say no.
Yeah, that's very true, and then it just wouldn't be made.
Well, that's my sign. Did you have any, because did you have another point?
Well, I wonder if maybe we should go to
ethical rating.
Ethical rating.
So one thing we wanted to do was like rate these ethically. And we've spoken a lot about ethical rating. It's a little bit cheesy, and it's maybe not the greatest method, but I think we should think about that. And we've spoken about different scales, and I'm quite black and white on ethics.
I know you are.
If it's not.
But I do believe that a scale exists. I believe that spectrums exist.
I'm not a big spectrum guy, but I still think we can really think about, I still would want to do that. So we've kind of privately thought about how ethical we think it is. we talked about an ice skating model, the 6.0 model.
We did, but this is a very old ice skating scoring system.
We're not going to do the ice skating.
That was ditched in 2002 because of judging scandals. But that's beside the point. That's a different podcast, and one that I would love to do someday.
That's Megan Hoffman on thin ice. What we should, what we're doing now. So it's out of 5.
Yeah.
I've decided out of 5.
Okay.
So a rating out
you're
of 5.
saying we're doing a rating out of 5.
5 being, you know, it's so ethical. You can watch this without any guilt. Fill your boots.
Yeah.
1 being, if you watch this, you're genuinely a bad person.
You're dead to Simon Hobbs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Join the list. Okay. What are you? Do you want to go first? Ladies first.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 3.
Oh, bang in the middle on that fence.
Yeah, I am on the fence. And maybe when I first listened to it, I would have rated it higher. But like on the second listen, I don't think it's the worst. And I absolutely don't think it's the best. Yeah. In fact, like it annoyed me so much that maybe I want to give it something like, but I don't actually want to give it something lower. I'm going to give it a 3.
Okay. I'm also going 3, actually. That's quite, we're actually quite similar. I think that a 3 suggests that it's doing okay.
Yeah.
I think a 2 suggests that it's not ethical.
Yeah.
Which actually I think I think it's kind of fine.
Yeah.
I think it does some things well, it does some things poorly. It could be better, but it could be a whole lot worse. And actually since, there's been things that are so much worse, that follow a similar narrative, which we might talk about in future weeks.
Yeah. Wow, our first podcast, we actually agree on the ethical rating.
I know. I'm not sure that will happen again.
I'm not sure that will happen again,
yeah,
but it's fun.
But this is quite a good starting point because there is a neutrality to it, which I think is quite interesting.
That's true.
And worthy of exploration.
Yeah.
And I think in future weeks, the ones that we do might not have that and might kind of rile us up.
We might argue.
Oh, we'll argue, all right.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for.
Thank you. No, thank you, actually. And that's it. Thank you for listening to the Ethical True Crime Review with Dr. Simon Hobbs and Dr. Megan Hoffman.